Kia ora everyone. My name is Tepou. I'm of Māori Cook Island descent. In the past I've had a lot of challenges with trauma, PTSD, depression and alcohol and substance abuse.
Kia ora, I'm Makiroa and I'm Rarotonga Māori. I was diagnosed with, firstly, postnatal depression, which led to bipolar manic depressive. I think anyone could really relate to self-stigma, whether you have lived experience or not, on mental health issues and addictions. For myself personally, self-stigma, let's talk about some of the things that went through my mind. I was unworthy, I was inadequate, just a waste of space, and really just real negative thoughts. When I first experienced becoming unwell was when I fell pregnant with my daughter, and I started experiencing postnatal depression. Well, I wasn't really aware of it at the time, but I was going through postnatal depression, which led to bipolar.
For me, as a result of self-stigma, was it started off for me from isolating. I started to isolate myself from family, friends. I started to dissociate from myself and withdraw within myself. And then came the substance abuse. What I noticed with substance abuse is when I drank or when I used meth or whatever substance, cannabis, that it helped me to forget about the pain of self-stigma. And then, but after a while I became dependent on it, and as soon as I came clean, as soon as the drug wore off, I was crazy. I started to become aggressive. I started to self-harm, harm other people. I became more active within gang culture. So growing up, I grew up in gangs with, my father was a gang member. So I started selling drugs so I could forget about the pain, really. That's how it was for me. Some of the ways that I dealt with self-stigma was, obviously I mentioned it earlier with substance abuse and that. But what I noticed, what it started to do with me was I started to lose my sense of identity. I started to believe that what other people said about drug addicts, or people that grow up in gang culture, or people with a mental health diagnosis, I started to believe that everything they said I was, that's all I was, you know. But what I come to realise was that was only a small part of it. You know, really, I realised that I had to find my identity again. And how I done that was I had to realise and go back into culture and realise and be proud of being Māori, be proud of being Cook Island, be proud of the good things I done as a father. And I had to keep reinforcing that in my mind, because I used to have this internal battle with all the self-stigma, with that, no, but those other people are right. But what I realised is that, well, actually, I know myself better than anyone does, because I've been with myself 24/7 for my whole life.
I'm not afraid to reach out and talk about what's actually going on for me and put my cards on the table so that I can actually get some support. My willingness to persevere and push forward, always bearing in mind that a thought is a thought and that it will pass. A feeling is a feeling and it will pass, and that trials, they pass.
So what led to me overcoming self-stigma, it's really funny actually, was hitting rock bottom. So I hit a rock bottom where I had committed a crime. I was potentially looking at going to prison. My partner was ready to give me the boot. And so once I hit rock bottom, I realised that if I didn't change, I was going to lose her. And I wasn't just going to lose her, I was going to lose my children. And at that stage, I had already lost myself. I had burnt all my bridges, no family would trust me, no friends would trust me, I was too violent, too aggressive. So what that done though was it gave me the motivation, because I had nothing to lose, that I have to reach out for help. So that's what I did. I remember going to an uncle's anger management graduation, and it was the first time ever that I'd experienced social services where they help other people. In gang culture, you kind of isolate yourself from social people. You live a life of anti-socialism, a life of crime, basically, so you don't associate with people that are trying to do good in society. So when I experienced that from my uncle, I remembered that. And whilst I was at his graduation and he graduated an anger management program, I saw, wow, people can change. So I remember that when I hit my rock bottom, I went over to my uncle's place and I said to him, Uncle, you know, I'm ready to change. I need help. I walked through the door and that was basically the beginning of a whole new life for me. It was the hardest thing that I had ever done, because the result of self-stigma towards myself, my substance abuse, it made me selfish. I ended up denying every wrong that I had ever done. Basically, it was your fault, it was his fault, it was her fault. But for the first time ever, when I walked into that social service, I admitted that, well, actually, it's your fault and maybe you do need help. So I went there, I got introduced to counsellors. I went and done alcohol and drug programs. How I ended up in mental health was I managed my emotions for so long with alcohol and drugs. When I came off them, all the trauma in my life and that all came back, and that's when I became diagnosed with PTSD. And so I went into mental health service, I got introduced to the RAP program, I met peer support. I felt that they knew what I was talking about. And what I saw in these people was I couldn't believe how healthy they looked. And I couldn't believe they had come from a similar experience, because they were working full time. I'd never met anyone who had experienced a similar lifestyle, but then go into hold down a full-time job. And so they taught me tools. I learned how to identify where the stigma came from. And I believe today now that people are not just born with it, the negative self-talk. I believe there's an origin to it and a history. So through seeing clinicians, I got taught to identify what the issue was and where it came from. Society, community, people judging. And once I knew what the cause was of my self-stigma, then I learned tools to counteract it. The most important tool for me was being able to identify where that self-stigma came from. Because if I can't understand, I believe, where the stigma came from, or what stigma is, self-stigma, I believe that how can I know which tool to use to, counteract self-stigma? So what I do is a lot of positive self-talk, reflection on a daily basis. So I like to journal a lot. But more importantly, I associate with myself with support groups, people from with similar experience. And what we do is we row the waka, you know, together as a whānau. And so we help each other. So I'm not trying to do it alone. When I'm down, someone's there to pick me up. When they're down, I'm there to pick them up too. And so now today, after a few years of work in recovery, it's become a habit. Don't let self-stigma define who you are. Just because labels can be put onto us from other people, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally by people. But it doesn't mean that we have to let that define us. And I believe that anyone can recover from that if you persevere and do it smart and get the right supports.
Seek the right support. Keep seeking support until you get the right support. Your lived experiences mold you and help you be your authentic self. Remember, you're an asset. You have so much to give.